What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Where Stats Meet Instinct. I am your host, Sam. Excited to be here with you today. We got a great episode coming up. So, today we are going to talk spring training. Specifically, we are going to talk about a 24-hour period from Saturday night, March 7th, through Sunday afternoon, March 8th. In my opinion, and I don't have a ton to compare it to, but as an A's fan, I think that was the best 24-hour period we've ever had in spring training. We have a walk-off home run on Saturday night by Daryl Hernandez. Then you go into Sunday. Sunday morning, you have Sevy starting for the Dominican Republic in the World Baseball Classic. And then you have a split squad where the A's are partially in Vegas, partially in Arizona. Both games phenomenal with a lot of young kids doing a lot of really, really good things and coming out with 2 wins in those 2 games as well. So I labeled it as the best day of spring training we have ever had as A's fans. Is it actually the case? I don't know. I don't really care. It's my show. We're calling it that. So what I did is I made a list of the 10 guys that basically had the best performances just in that 24-hour period. And I even added in an honorable mention because there were just that many guys that did really good things this weekend as a team. So we're going to start with honorable mention. We are going to talk about Aaron Civale a little bit. We're going to go through each of these guys. Some guys we're going to spend more time on because I think the conversation is a little broader and goes into some roster implications and stuff like that. Some guys we're going to breeze right through, but there's 11 guys on this list, so we have plenty of guys to talk about. So to start with, honorable mention, I put Aaron Civale. I watched his start against the Angels in Las Vegas, and I thought he looked really good overall. Now, the final stat line isn't going to look phenomenal, and we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. But he went 3 2/3, gave up 5 hits, 2 runs, no walks, 4 strikeouts. Watching this outing, he looked really sharp. The breaking ball looked really good. He got a couple strikeouts on the breaking ball, was getting some swings and misses on the breaking ball. He got some weak contact early in counts as well. The no walks to 4 strikeouts, I think, was a really big thing. And it was just good to see a guy. He's in his second outing. I think his first outing against Brazil was a little shaky. This one looked more like, I think, what we can expect to see from Aaron Civale going forward. So I wanted to mention him as honorable mention. One thing about him, too, though, is I felt like he threw the ball really, really well, but he gave up a 2-run homer, and so the final stat line doesn't look that great. I think that's going to be kind of a theme with him throughout the year, where you feel like he's actually pitching pretty well, but there's a 2 or 3-run homer mixed in there, and then you look at the final stat line at the end, and you're like, 5 1/3, 3 runs, it's just okay. I think he's going to have a lot of outings like that. On the outings he can avoid the home run, I think he's going to be pretty effective, but we'll see moving forward. But I thought it was good to see him mixing in all his pitches. He threw everything. He was throwing everything for strikes. He was filling up the zone. And I thought it was good to see him go a little bit with a little more length in that outing, which was good to see. So that's honorable mention. We're going to breeze through that. Number 10, I have Joshua Kuroda-Grauer. So he played in the game against the Angels as well. He didn't have a huge day, but he had a really solid day at the plate. So he was 1 for 3 with a double, a walk, and an RBI. And he's a guy that's performed really well throughout spring training. Now, I've said several times, take spring training with a grain of salt. I don't put too much weight on spring training stats. But one area I do like to see is what these prospects are doing in their opportunities, because it's one of the opportunities where they're in big league camp, they're playing against big league players, they're getting experience, and it's as fans, our opportunity to get to see them do a few things that we haven't seen them do in the past. Now, with Joshua Kuroda-Grauer, he's done exactly what I think fans expect him to do, which is hit for a high average. I think that's something that's always going to be a part of his game. The thing with him is he threads a really thin line of success, or toes a really thin line of success, in that he doesn't draw a lot of walks and he doesn't hit for a lot of power. So he's going to have to hit a bunch, right? And Jacob Wilson is the same way. Now, Jacob Wilson hit 400 throughout his minor league career, whereas Kuroda-Grauer is hovering around 290. So I don't think there's as much upside as with Jacob Wilson, because Jacob Wilson's just one of the best pure hitters in baseball. Kuroda-Grauer, I think, is a very, very good pure hitter. But he's going to have to keep hitting. But throughout spring training, he's shown the ability to keep hitting. There was an article written by Martin Gallegos where it talked about how he's gained 25 pounds, and you can see the ball coming off his bat pretty well. I think he's had a couple of exit velos around 107, which is really high. This is a guy who only has 2 career home runs in the minor leagues in 2 seasons. But he's doing a lot of things well in spring training, including hitting the ball a little bit harder, continuing to hit for a high average, and he's played good defense. I think he has a lot of the makings of not an everyday player, but a utility guy that's valuable that can add some balance to a lineup. The A's are going to have a lot of guys that swing and miss in their lineup in the foreseeable future. So having a couple guys like this on the roster, similar to like Jeff McNeil and Jacob Wilson now, maybe a poor man's version of that, I think is a really good thing. So it's been good to see him swing the bat fairly well. The next 3, 9, 8, and 7 on the list, we are going to talk about some young pitchers that threw the ball well and have been throwing the ball well throughout spring training, at least a couple of them. So number 9, I have Kenya Huggins. Kenya Huggins was acquired in the trade for Miguel Andujar from the Reds. He threw 1 2/3 innings, 1 hit, no runs, no walks, and a strikeout. And he's thrown well in spring training so far. He's a guy I actually like quite a bit. He seems to hide the baseball pretty well in his delivery. There's a sinker there. There's a slider there. Both pitches look solid, and I think there's not massive upside with him, but I do think there's a potential, number 5 starter, or potentially transition him to the bullpen and he throws well there. But he's thrown really well in spring training too. That's been good to see. And so I wanted to mention him on this list as well. He threw really, really well. Zane Taylor, my guy, I told you guys last week, lock him in as the A's minor league pitcher of the year. He didn't do anything to change my mind in his outing against the Dodgers. He threw 2 shutout innings, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. Big thing here is his velocity was about 94 to 96, which is really good to see. Like we talked about last time, when he's drafted, he's kind of had a reputation of being a strike thrower that maybe the stuff kind of lags behind a little bit. But the velo's ticked up a little bit, and you've seen it in spring training. On top of that, he's got this athletic delivery that I've talked about before. He's kind of an undersized righty. He's a bulldog on the mound. There's a lot of things to like about what he's done in spring training. Throws a lot of different pitches too. We couldn't watch this one, so this was just StatCast. But he threw like 4 or 5 different pitches. Again, the fastball velo was good to see. Filled up the strike zone, missed some bats, and was throwing pretty well. Number 7 on this list, I have Steven Echavarria. We're just going to call him Etch because I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly. This is a guy I have not talked about yet, but it was really, really good to see him get in a spring training game. So Etch was a 3rd-round pick 2 years ago. First year in the minor leagues, the A's really pushed him by starting him in Stockton. Now, usually when you draft a high school kid that next year, they're in the complex league in Arizona. The A's really pushed Etch his first year, and they had him basically pitch the entire season in Stockton. Now, he struggled in that, but he flashed a lot of really good stuff. He's a guy that throws really, really hard. In this outing, he touched 99 miles an hour closing out the game against the Dodgers. Went 1, 2, 3, struck out 2 guys. And again, like I said, touched 99 miles an hour, which is not something you can teach. So that's something you really have to take note of as an A's fan. Last year, he was in Lansing, which is still a really aggressive assignment for a 19-year-old turning 20 during the year. And he held his own. I would say he built off that year in Stockton, where he struggled throughout most of the year. This last year in Lansing, he threw, I would say, solid. He didn't dominate, but he had dominant outings. He's continued to flash the stuff you've seen from him, and you can continue to see him develop as a pitcher, right? And that's what you're looking for with a lot of these prospects. There's very few Leo De Vries that are just going to hit the ground running and be successful at whatever level you put them at. There's a lot more Steven Echavarrias, where there's going to be some bumps in the road. There's going to be some growing pains. There's going to be some ups and downs. And you do want to see guys work through that. Now, the big question I have about Etch is the ability to miss bats. On paper or the eye test, you look at his stuff, he's got a wicked slider, he's got a fastball in the upper 90s. You would think he would rack up the strikeouts, especially in the lower minor leagues. And he hasn't done that, which makes me wonder about the shape of his fastball, which shape of fastball is kind of a new age terminology for pitching. All it means is like, how does your fastball approach home plate? Some guys have that little bit of perceived rise. Some guys have sink. Some guys are kind of just right in the middle, and that's where you don't want to be. That's my concern with a guy that throws as hard as he does with as good a breaking stuff as he has that doesn't miss bats, is that maybe it's a little bit what old school would call flat. So I would like to see what the A's do with that. And that's something I want to see this year. I don't know if he's going to start out in Lansing again or if they'll push him to Midland. They've been aggressive with him so far. At the same time, there's limited spots in Midland. I don't really think it matters to start the year because I think you just want to give him an opportunity to throw innings. But I'm curious to see if he starts missing more bats. Because if he starts missing more bats and shows that he's able to miss more bats and that he can rack up strikeouts, then I think the ceiling on him raises quite a bit. So a lot of times we see a guy that throws really hard and we assume they have a high ceiling. What I want to see is in-zone swing and miss on the fastball. And when you start to see that, I think that you can expect the ceiling to be a little bit higher and you can start to project him to be that frontline guy that his stuff suggests. And in this outing, he did that. He struck out 2 guys. He got swings and misses on the fastball. He was up to 99. That was really, really good to see. Now, I do think he reminds me a little bit of Luis Morales. Luis Morales last year, I believe, started in Lansing and then worked his way up through AA and AAA and got to the big leagues. I don't think necessarily that Etch is going to get to the big leagues, but I could see him being kind of one of those breakout guys in the minor leagues this year if he starts to miss more bats. And so that's why this outing I thought was really, really positive from him. So we've covered some prospects so far. Now we're going to go get to one of the more established guys. This list is full of prospects, by the way, so it's a little bit of everything. Andy Ibanez, he went 4 for 5. He had 2 doubles, 2 RBIs, and overall had a really good weekend. Now he's hitting 400 in spring training. He is a very, I think, consistent player. You know what you're going to get from him. I think he's kind of locked down one of the utility roles, and we'll get into a little bit more. I think that's actually a little bit muddier than I think people think right now. But he has had some really good at-bats in spring training. He's hit the ball hard. His exit velos are good. I've read some reports that the A's are really impressed with his defense at third base. He's played really good defense throughout his career at third base. He's played second. He's also played first. He's played a little bit of outfield too. And I think just the versatility, the volume of positions he plays is a really big factor for the A's this year. I think versatility is going to be something that's really important. I think that's part of the reason why Jeff McNeil was so attractive to the A's as well. But he's had a great spring training so far, hitting the ball, playing solid defense. I don't really have a lot to say about him. I think he's a backup infielder that provides a floor at third base if Max Muncy really struggles. But he's played well. He's done the things you want him to do. And he had a great day on Sunday against the Dodgers. Number 5, Tommy White. I talked about him last week, and I said, I don't really see the fit on the A's roster long term. But, man, this guy has left the yard quite a bit this last weekend, and he has hit everything hard. Now, again, this is spring training. There's a grain of salt you need to take this with. He is hitting for a little bit more power. I think that's good. I just don't know what the guy can do to supplant or to replace Rooker or Kurtz. I don't really see him as a third baseman. He's made some plays at third base, but I don't really think that's a long-term position. But regardless, he's hit everything hard in spring training. And the 2 home runs he hit were both really impressive. One was a laser to left center off a hanging breaking ball. The other one, he went the other way. He also does this thing with 2 strikes, like his first home run to left center. He basically doesn't have a stride. It doesn't even look like he has a lot of rhythm in his hands or in his swing. And all of a sudden, the pitch is coming to him, and his hands just explode on the baseball, and he hits it like 400 feet. So it's a really unique setup. But he is absolutely crushing the baseball in spring training. He hit 2 home runs in Las Vegas. That was cool to see. I really hope the A's can find more of a long-term fit for him on the roster because he is an electric player. He's going to be a guy that's a fan favorite. He's going to be a guy that sells tickets, that brings people to the yard. I just don't know what that fit's going to be. But regardless, it was really exciting to see him do what he did in Las Vegas this past weekend. Number 4, and I think this one might be a little bit lost on some people, Luis Severino looked really good in his start for the Dominican Republic. He was facing the Netherlands, which is probably about the equivalent of a spring training lineup. There's 3 like really good everyday MLBers in there. There's about 3 guys that are like backup quality, whatever. And then there's 3 guys that are more prospects. So it's really similar to a lineup you're going to face in spring training. Obviously, there's a lot more adrenaline. There's a lot more at stake in the World Baseball Classic. So you're going to be a little bit more focused, a little more locked in than you are in a spring training outing where you're really working on stuff. I think that's one thing with the World Baseball Classic versus spring training. World Baseball Classic is a baseball game you're trying to win, which means you are trying to get hitters out. You have scouting reports on all the hitters. You're studying the scouting reports, and you're attacking those hitters' weaknesses with your stuff. In spring training, there's 40 guys on a spring training roster. You're not going to go over the scouting reports in depth on all of those guys before the game. So really what you're going to do is you're going to go out there and you're going to say, hey, I'm going to work on 1 or 2 pitches and really focus on those, especially if you're a veteran like Sevy. And so it's just really tough to gauge results from pitchers and from hitters in spring training because of that. In the World Baseball Classic, I think there's a little bit more you can gauge because you're actually competing in a high stakes tournament in leverage situations. And Sevy looked really, really good. He gave up 1 solo home run, but other than that, he really dominated. I watched every pitch of this outing, and this was as in control of a game as I think I've seen Sevy since he's been with the A's. So he threw 4 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, no walks, 5 strikeouts. The stuff looked really, really good. The fastball was 97 to 99. I don't think I saw a fastball dip below 97. He was throwing his cutter at 95 to 97. So he threw 197 mile an hour cutter, and I was like, I don't think I've seen that from him before. The stuff looked really, really crisp. And then the best pitch, that sweeper, looked really, really good. And looking at some of the stuff metrics after the game on Twitter, the sweeper graded incredibly high at the end of that game. So he threw basically the four-seamer, the sinker, the cutter, the sweeper. I don't know if he threw any changeups at all, but all of those pitches looked really, really good. And maybe more importantly, he was attacking the zone. He was getting ahead in counts, and he was putting guys away when he was ahead in counts. One thing with Sevy last year, there were some times where it seemed like he was nitpicking around the zone, and he would get himself into a lot of 3-2 counts. He would get himself through 4 innings at 80 pitches, and he wasn't really able to go deep into the game. And another thing when you're nitpicking, you're just putting so much stress on each pitch because every pitch is so important when you're in a 3-1 count and you have to throw a strike or you're going to let a guy on base, stuff like that. When he was getting ahead in the count in this game, he was putting guys away. He looked dominant. The stuff looked really, really sharp. He looked like a frontline guy. Earlier I said, I think it was on my first episode, I said, I don't think Sevy provides a ceiling. I think he provides a floor for this pitching staff. But that looked like a ceiling to me. Like that looked like a frontline guy. If he can maintain any bit of that, I do think that is a massive, massive development for the A's because his stuff looked incredibly crisp, incredibly good, and he was commanding all of it within the zone. So that was really, really good to see. I still only have him at number 4 on this list because there were some other guys that did some great things. Number 3, we got Booney's buddy, Henry Bolte. He went 4 for 4 with a home run and a double, and this is something that this guy has done all spring training long. So the things that stand out to you about Bolte is just the pure athleticism. His speed, he had a double that was maybe the most impressive thing he did in that game that we watched on Saturday. It was a line drive down, or on Sunday. It was a line drive between third and short. It didn't get to the wall. The left fielder cut it off, made a good throw in, and he was absolutely flying into second base and made it fairly easily. This guy's one of the fastest guys in the organization. I think it's really him and Denzel Clark is like the 2 clear best athletes in the organization, and I don't think it's close after those 2. this kid is an absolute freak athlete. And the more you watch him, the more you realize, like, this kid is an absolute freak. Now, I'm really excited about his long-term future. I don't know if he is a true center fielder or if he is a right fielder. He has the tools to play center. The A's have typically played him more in the corners. Now, usually when you have a center fielder, like a pure center fielder that you view as like an everyday big league center fielder, you're going to play him in center field all the way up through the minor leagues. So like Ryan Lasko is an example of that. I think the A's view him as a legitimate like defensive center fielder. And so he plays center field pretty much every day. Denzel Clark was the same thing. Coming up through the minors, he plays center field pretty much every day. Now, Bolte plays more right, and he mixes in at center. And I've read some scouting reports that basically suggest like he's really fast, but he doesn't quite get to as many balls in the outfield as you would expect with that speed. He's got a really strong arm, but he doesn't throw as many guys out as you would expect to with that arm. So it makes me think the A's view him a little bit more as a right fielder based on how they've played him in past seasons, how they play him in spring training. But the tools are there to play center. It's just, is he going to develop as a center fielder? Now, the bat seems like it's coming around. He's always been a guy with swing and miss concerns and then ground ball concerns throughout the minor leagues. He has done a good job of still hitting for average. Part of that is his speed. Part of that is just he hits the ball really, really hard. He's a really strong kid. And so he's a guy that has still found a way to have fairly good success, even with some pretty obvious flaws in his offensive game. But this spring training, he's gotten there, and it seems like he's elevating the ball a little bit more. He's still hitting the ball on the ground a lot, but he's hitting it hard. It's getting through. It does seem like there's some refinement to the offensive game that is going on right now. He's also 22 years old. He's incredibly young. This, I think, bodes really, really well for his future because he still has a lot of maturing to do. He still has a lot of growing up to do. He has a lot of filling out to do. And I see him developing more as a hitter as he continues to age and continue to mature. Now, this A's roster is designed for Denzel Clark to play center field. Like the A's have kind of built it that way throughout this offseason. The A's have a young pitching staff, and I think everyone would look at the pitching staff and say, this is probably the weakness of the team this year. You need to have league average pitching in order to be successful. Now, one thing you don't want to do when your pitching staff is maybe the weakness is you don't want to pair that with atrocious defense. And without Denzel Clark, this is a bottom 5 defense in Major League Baseball. With Denzel Clark, it's closer to the middle of the pack. So I think that's a big deal because I don't think you want to have a below average pitching staff with a terrible defense, and then you're basically relying on the offense to basically be the best offense in baseball. And again, that's a really thin line to walk. The other thing with offense, too, is pitching is a little bit more consistent over the course of the season. Offense is a little more streaky throughout the course of the season. So you're going to be a really streaky team, and you're only going to have one way to win a game if you basically are that reliant on your offense. The other thing is young pitchers, you want them to develop, you want them to gain confidence. One thing you need to do to help pitchers out with that is you need to have a good defense. And Denzel Clark single-handedly takes this team from below average defense to a middle of the pack defense. So he's a guy that I think the A's have kind of designed this team around. They have a ton of fly ball pitchers. They don't have a ton of like super high strikeout pitchers. And they've basically, with Denzel Clark at center, you have a really good defensive outfield. So at the very least, you're going to run down the balls that are hit out there. I think when you have so many fly ball pitchers, Jeffrey Springs, Jacob Lopez, Aaron Savale, and plus most of your relievers too, like Justin Sterner, Hogan Harris, these aren't ground ball guys, these are fly ball guys. Having an elite defense in the outfield with that allows an average defense overall as a team is a big deal in terms of winning as many games as you can and being a team that can win a game a variety of different ways. The other thing about Denzel Clark too, and this drives me crazy. Of course, he's not going to be the best hitter. He's not going to be the best hitter. I don't know how many times I need to say that. He is not going to be the best hitter the A's can put in center field. He's not. He makes his money being the best defensive outfielder in all of baseball. So when we try to compare him to other guys based on hitting stats, he's not going to be the best hitter. That's not why he is in center field. If the A's wanted to say, hey, the best hitter is going to play center field, it would be someone else. It would be someone else. But they're not doing that, and I think that's smart because I think they realize that Denzel Clark allows them to play a style of baseball that allows them as a team to be a lot more balanced, and that's going to allow them to have a variety of different ways to win games, and that's really what you want. You want a variety of different ways to win games. Now, is Denzel Clark going to be the center fielder by the end of the year? I don't know that. The A's don't know that. Denzel Clark doesn't know that. There are some serious questions about him, right? His offensive questions are actually really similar to Bolte's offensive questions, but they're more pronounced and they're more serious. With Denzel Clark, he's not as good of a hitter as Henry Bolte, but he did do some good things last year. His last 30 games, I believe he had an OPS above 900. He was hitting really, really well to end the year, and then he got hurt. Obviously, his overall numbers are okay, but the strikeout rate was really high. And so you look at it and you're like, okay, what is he going to be? When you have a guy that is this elite defensively, I think it is important to give him opportunities to be successful offensively, right? And I am going to weigh the end of the regular season that he played last year a lot more than I'm going to weigh anything anyone does in spring training, because spring training is the highest variance time of year. You are facing a bunch of different pitchers. Some guys are facing good pitchers. Some guys are facing bad pitchers, right? The teams aren't scouting the minor leaguers that are in camp that much. They, one, don't want to give away how they're going to get them out when they get to the big leagues. And two, you don't have time to study all these guys, and pitchers are more working on what they want to work on rather than what they think is going to get the hitter out. And so what you get is when you have like flawed hitters that aren't pitched in a way that they're going to be pitched during the regular season, it doesn't expose their flaws. So a lot of these guys like Tommy White, Henry Bolte, they're going out and they're raking, but I do think they need more polish in AAA, and they do need a little more time. And the thing is too, when I get heated about these things, the thought that pops in my head is like, hey, if Henry Bolte is this guy, he's not going to be in the minor leagues for very long. He's going to prove it really, really quickly, and he's going to be in the major leagues. So I'm excited about him. I think there's a chance he plays right field. I don't think he's going to be a major league average center fielder just yet. I think the A's are kind of telling you that with their utilization of him. But I do think there is a good chance Denzel Clark doesn't hit this year, right? And the A's are going to have to change course. But when they do that, Bolte's going to play center, and they're just going to say, hey, let's see what you could do out there. The other option is Jeff McNeil bounced out to center field if you want to get a guy like Daryl Hernandez more at-bats, or if you want to get a guy – I think that's probably the best example, like Daryl Hernandez more at-bats. There's a variety of things you can do. But overall, long-term, I'm excited about Bolte's future. But I'm not going to take a couple-week sample size in spring training that is really, really misleading and basically change the way I've designed this team based on that, especially when you have a glove-first guy that's always going to be glove-first. I think fans tend to weigh hitting a lot more than they weigh defense, and hitting is more important than defense, but I think they tend to undervalue defense. It's because when offense, when someone does something good, you're anticipating them doing something good. They're not going to get an at-bat out of nowhere, right? You know they're coming up in the order. They're coming up with runners in scoring position. You watch that at-bat, the tension builds. They strike out. You're super frustrated. They get a hit. You're super excited. So it's really easy to weigh defense a lot or offense a lot, whereas with defense, so a lot of the things Denzel Clark does, like obviously there's the highlight reels, but there's also plays like the very first play he made in the big leagues where Nick Castellanos hit a ball in the gap, and he ran it down. He caught it fairly easily, and it was standing up, didn't look like it was that much effort. But you look back, and that ball had a 20% chance of getting caught, right? And you're not weighing that as much as a double that someone else is going to hit during the game, but that has as much of an impact, if not more, probably as much, or it does have as much as someone hitting a double for your team later in the game. And so fans are always going to undervalue defense, which is why when you look at sample sizes of Denzel Clark, it's going to be easy to say, hey, he's not as good as Henry and Bolte at hitting, so therefore he's not as good. But when you have a glove first guy, you do have to take into consideration that he is not going to hit as well as other people, and that is okay. And he is not out there because he's the best hitter. He is out there because he is the best guy to help your team win at the beginning of the season. Now, with Denzel Clark, he's super high variance. I could see him, like I said, I've said this on my 2 shows ago, I could see him being an all-star. I could see him not being on the team in May. And that's the reality of the situation. But I don't think there's any reason to discount everything he did last year, which he did a lot last year. He was worth 1 whole win as a player. He played 47 games, the best defense anyone's ever seen at the major league level. And he still hit 230 with that, which is just fine. I don't think there's any reason to discount that because he's started off a little slow in spring training and someone else has done well. If that other guy is as good as we think he is, he's going to have no problem earning his way onto the big league roster very, very quickly. And if Denzel Clark is as bad as a lot of people think he is offensively, then he is going to earn his way off of the big league roster very, very quickly. But I don't think there's a reason to flip Bolte and Denzel this early. I just don't think that's the way to go. So, rant over. We're moving on to other things. Leo De Vries is my number 2 guy. 2 home runs, including a grand slam against the Dodgers. Number 1 prospect in the A's organization. Number 4 prospect in all of baseball. Man, that was fun to see. That was fun to see. This kid is doing some things offensively that are really, really exciting. Now, again, I don't think there's any reason to rush him. Same with Bolte. If he is as good as we think he is going to earn his way to the big leagues. He's going to earn his way. The cream's going to rise to the top. I'm not going to pencil him in at third base based on spring training. I'm also not going to put a ceiling on him because we saw what Nick Kurtz did last year where he was up in May and was the rookie of the year. I don't expect that from Leo. I expect him to start in AA. I expect the A's to take a little bit more time with him because he is 19. But, man, the polish on this kid is special. It is fun to watch. And I'm excited every time he's in the lineup. Number 1, we got our guy Daryl Hernandez, walk-off home run in the World Baseball Classic for Puerto Rico. I can't imagine a better feeling as a player than hitting a walk-off home run for your country like that in such a big game in your home country as well. That was great to see. Daryl Hernandez is a guy kind of like Joshua Kuroda-Grauer who's been really, really playing well throughout spring training. So he's a guy that a lot of people are really excited about. He's the same as Jacob Wilson. He's the same as Joshua Kuroda-Grauer. He walks a very thin line of success in that he doesn't walk a lot and he doesn't hit for a lot of power. If he hits 280, that's a good utility guy. If he hits 300, that's a good regular. If he hits 260, you're probably looking at more minor league depth. I think he's shown some really positive things. I think he's a guy that can be a utility guy on this team. It is interesting because I do think him and Andy Ibanez are redundant. They're both right-handed kind of utility guys. And do you really need 2 right-handed utility guys on your roster? You can definitely make that work. And if they are 2 of the best players, then you can definitely make that work. But basically the way I look at it is there's 3 guys for 4 spots. So you have Colby Thomas, Carlos Cortez, Andy Ibanez, and Daryl Hernandez. Now there's a very clean way to fit this into a roster. You have Colby Thomas as the right-handed bat off the bench that also gets a lot of starts against lefties with your 2 left-handed hitting outfielders. When they sit down against lefties. And then Carlos Cortez is the left-handed pinch hitter off the bench. One of Andy Ibanez and Daryl Hernandez is like the utility guy, and the other's not on the team. I don't think that's how it's going to play out. I think Colby Thomas, with the injuries had throughout spring training, with the A's kind of working him back slowly with that, and with some of maybe the development that they want to see from him in terms of pitch selection and stuff like that, I think there's a good chance he is the guy that doesn't make it out of those 3. They carry 2 infielders, backup infielders. I'll be very interested to see how that plays out. I would think you would prioritize Andy Ibanez against left-handed pitchers. I would think Daryl Hernandez is more of the guy you would play at shortstop, but that's not a ton of at-bats for either of them. I'm wondering, and the A's haven't shown this in spring training, which is something I'm a little bit curious about. Andy Ibanez does have some experience in the outfield. I wonder if late in spring training they're going to start to give him reps in the outfield. That could signal that basically he's going to kind of fill two roles. He's going to fill that Colby Thomas role of like a right-hander that's going to play a little bit of corner outfield at times and then also play some infield and really turn into a super utility guy. The A's haven't played him in the outfield yet, so I'm kind of wondering if that's something they're going to do, or if they're just going to roll two backup infielders out there on the roster, or if they're not going to keep one of these two guys that has been as probably based on their track record and their fit on the roster earned a spot over the past couple years. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. I don't think Daryl Hernandez's spot on the roster is guaranteed, which I think is going to shock some people right now. I don't think his spot on the roster is guaranteed, but I do think he has a better shot to make the roster than Colby Thomas. So we'll see how that shakes out. There's still a lot of time with that. One injury, and it becomes very apparent who makes the roster and who doesn't. And there is a chance I think Colby Thomas starts the season on the IL, and I think that might be what ends up happening and kind of how the roster shakes out. But Daryl Hernandez has had a great run, hitting a walk-off home run in the World Baseball Classic. Again, I put a little more weight on those games. For hitters, it's just still such a small sample size, but I do put a little bit more weight on those games because it's so high stakes, because the adrenaline's going, because it simulates what competitive baseball is like, whereas spring training is a little bit different with pitchers working on stuff and different things like that. So it was really exciting to see Daryl Hernandez. Again, I can't imagine a better spring training 24-hour period than this. You have Daryl Hernandez hitting a walk-off home run in the World Baseball Classic. You have Sevy shoving for the Dominican Republic. You have the A's beating the Angels and the Dodgers with one of the squads in Vegas. You have young guys dominating on the mound with Kenya Huggins, Zane Taylor, Steven Echavarria. You have guys dominating at the plate, Tommy White, Henry Bolte, Leo De Vries, some of these young guys. You have veterans like Andy Ibanez doing well. Kuroda-Grauer had a good day. There was just so many good things to see with this. I'm excited about all these guys. Again, I do think Leo De Vries, super exciting. Henry Bolte, super exciting. His long-term future, I think, is looking better with the more polish he adds at the plate. That is something I'm super excited about. He's also just an incredible athlete. Like, he is such a good athlete. Tommy White, just prove me wrong. Just be able to play third base, hit enough to make it work. Prove me wrong. Please do that. The young pitchers, really exciting to see. One thing I want to touch on before we go, couple roster cuts today. Nothing super shocking. Brady Basso was sent to minor league camp. So seems like the A's are really only going to go one lefty out of the bullpen. A guy that can kind of help mitigate that is Mark Leiter Jr. because he has reverse splits. He gets lefties out better than he gets righties out. So you can kind of use Mark Leiter almost as you would a second lefty reliever. So that was something I thought was mildly notable. Brett Harris got sent down. He just wasn't playing. It was pretty obvious with how the A's were utilizing him. They're playing him more at first base than third base. They were really giving the third base reps to Muncy. It really seems like that's where they're going with it. So he got sent down. Few other guys got sent down. Nothing super of note, but you are starting to see that roster condense a little bit. You have guys like Henry Bolte hanging around. I don't think he hangs around if he doesn't play this well this far. Same with Tommy White, but they have played their way into some conversations, which is good to see. And there is notable improvement. I think we have just a big enough sample size now where we can start to see some real improvements from some guys. It doesn't mean I think they're going to be on the big league roster. It doesn't mean I think they can be successful right away in the big leagues. But what it does mean is that they are making improvements that the A's want to see them make, and that is overwhelmingly positive. So that's what I got for you guys tonight. The A's are doing a lot of cool things in spring training. There's a lot of positivity around this roster right now. I can't wait for opening day. We are getting there. It'll be here before we know it. Then we're going to forget about all this spring training stuff, and we're going to be on to new arguments. It's going to be great. I'm excited about this A's team. I'm excited about where they're going. One thing this A's roster has, and what this last weekend showed us, is there is depth of minor leaguers, of big leaguers. That is something the A's haven't had for a while, and that is something I'm really excited about. So that's what I got for you guys tonight. Again, this has been another episode of Where Stats Meet Instinct. I'm your host, Sam. You can find me on Twitter at Straight A's. I will see you guys a little bit later this week, and as always, go A's.